Folks, Donald Trump's decision to send military to California is going to cost American taxpayers $134 million. It is grossly unnecessary. It's a waste of money, but he's also spending about $100 million on his stupid parade, military parade. That's really about celebrating his birthday. It is not about celebrating 250 years of the United States Army. Now, there's a battle that continues to heat up between Governor Gavin Newsom, Attorney General Rob Bonta, and that fool sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. First and foremost, Trump lied. He claims that he called the governor of California, couldn't get him on the phone. Nope. Newsom literally posted a screenshot of his caller ID on social media that shows that he is absolute lying. This is an unconstitutional move that he is making. Now, Governor Newsom has filed an emergency lawsuit against the Trump administration, arguing that the Trump attacks on California is a problem when it comes to states' rights. Yeah, that's real. So here is some discussion. Well, first of all, here is what this fool Pete Hegseth, of course, the defense secretary, told Congress today about this $134 million in troops now going to California.
Mr. Secretary, I want to express my severe concern with the deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles without consultation of the state of California. There have been photographs that have shown these troops sleeping on the floor and have not been provided fuel, food, or water by DOD. How long will this deployment last, and why were we unprepared to provide them basic necessities such as food and water?
The commanders and troops on the field are very well prepared, sir. They responded incredibly rapidly to a deteriorating situation with equipment and capabilities. We have made sure from the top down, as a Secretary of Defense who's been in a unit holding riot shields outside the White House during the chaos of the summer of 2020. I know what it's like to be immediately deployed into a situation like that. There are moments where you make do as best you can temporarily, but we are ensuring they're housed, fed, water capabilities in real time from my office, because I care that much about the California Guard and the Marines and the men and women who are supporting our ICE agents on the ground.
You should check
it's true every day, and that's a disingenuous attack that misrepresents how much we care about our troops and what they're doing to defend ICE agents. I'm not going to take the fact that we don't care about the troops. Nobody cares more about the troops at the top than this Secretary and the Chairman and our department.
How long will the deployment last?
We stated very publicly that it's 60 days. Because we want to ensure that those rioters, looters, and thugs on the other side assaulting our police officers know that we're not going anywhere. We're here to maintain the peace on behalf of law enforcement officers in Los Angeles, which Gavin Newsom won't do.
What is the estimated cost of the deployment for the Guard and the Marines to L.A., and where's this funding coming from? Will it be coming from quality of life programs that affect our service members or our families? If you want to wait till I finish.
Before I hand it to
such as updates, housing and barracks.
Before I hand it to Bryn, the insinuation that we're pulling money from housing and barracks in order to fund this is disingenuous and incorrect.
I'm just asking.
Bryn can give you the numbers. Absolutely.
So the current estimated cost is $134 million, which is largely just TDY costs, travel, housing, food, et cetera.
Oh, where's it coming from? That's the cost, but where's it coming from?
Out of their O&M accounts.
With the most recent deployment of the Marines, Mr. Secretary, what's the justification for using the military for civilian law enforcement purposes in L.A.? Why are you sending war fighters to cities to interact with civilians?
Every American citizen deserves to live in a community that's safe, and ICE agents need to be able to do their job. They're being attacked for doing their job, which is deporting illegal criminals. That should happen in any city, Minneapolis or Los Angeles. And if they're attacked, that's lawless, and President Trump believes in law and order. So he has every authority, and he has done mobilizing National Guard or active duty troops under U.S. code to protect federal agents in their job, which is exactly what we're doing, and we're proud to do it. We're proud to do it.
10 U.S.C. of the U.S. Code 12406 as a legal basis that the president used cites 3 examples and circumstances for the Guard: invasion by a foreign nation, rebellion or dangerous rebellion against the authority of the government of the United States, or the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Which authority is triggered here to justify the use?
I don't know. You just read it yourself, and people can listen themselves, but it sounds like all three to me. If you've got millions of illegals and you don't know where they're coming from, they're waving flags from foreign countries and assaulting police officers and law enforcement officers, that's a problem.
The laws of the United States?
No, the governor of California is unable to execute the laws of the United States.
The president, you said all three apply.
The governor of the California has failed to protect his people, along with the mayor of Los Angeles, and so President Trump has said he will protect our agents, and our Guard and Marines are proud to do it.
The law also says, Mr. Secretary, that the orders for these purposes shall be issued through governors of the states.
You and I both know that President Trump has all the authorities necessary, and thankfully he's willing to do it on behalf of the citizens of Los Angeles, on behalf of our ICE agents, and behalf of our country.
We've also pulled $1 billion for the border as well. So this just goes into the same, fund, 134. What did
Congressman, what's the
134 million? I was asking Ms. McDonald.
Okay.
134 million goes on top of the billion that's been pulled for the border.
So the funding that was pulled for this year was largely in FSRM, and in this budget, we're actually looking to plus that funding back up to backfill that for our troops and for their families.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Well, you see the sheer arrogance of this idiot Pete Hegseth. Now, to understand where we are, folks in Los Angeles say that the presence of the military plus these ICE agents is making it very difficult to quell the protests that are taking there. They also say, warning that the presence of a visible presence of federal troops is inflaming the tensions there in Los Angeles. Now, U.S. District Judge Charles Breyer will decide whether to halt the deployment of the troops in the coming days due to this particular lawsuit. So lots of drama going on. Let's go to our panel. Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice at the EPA, joins us out of D.C. Dr. Larry Walker, associate professor, University of Central Florida, out of Orlando. Tyler McMillan, social justice leader and movement strategist out of D.C. What you have here, obviously, is an administration that wants to provoke this, Mustafa. You see Trump lying about Governor Gavin Newsom, lying about him not returning his phone calls. And so that's what we got going on here. And then you saw Pete Hegseth. He also was lying there. The law is the law. It is very clear when in terms of the authority when you are to send troops to states, it's a request from the governor. We all know that. In fact, we played it yesterday, control room, get the clip ready. Donald Trump even said it himself before. But see, they don't care. They will just change stuff at a heartbeat and go, oh, we can do it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, we're very clear. The beauty of this show, the beauty of this network is, even a year before the election, we began to lay out for folks the things that you should be thinking about, that you should be concerned with, because, we had a blueprint from the first Trump administration, and we knew that they were going to, Trump 2.0, that they were going to turn it up. So now you see an individual who is trying as diligently as he possibly can to make sure that martial law is happening across our country, to be able to strip rights away from individuals. They have very little concern for the law when the law stops them from doing egregious types of actions. So we're seeing it continually playing out right here in front of us. And they will do anything that they can to fan the flames. And when they do that, then they try and justify bringing in individuals when we could be using that money to actually feed people or to house the unhoused. There are so many different things that we could be doing with that 134 million and the 100+ million for the parade that would actually benefit both our most vulnerable and people across our country.
But they don't care, because what this is about is a television show, Larry. That's all this is. Donald Trump wants to present all of this like it's a big TV show. Yes, I have a show of force. And again, his actions are wrong. He knows it's illegal because he actually said it. Roll it.
4 years. I promised 4 years ago at the Republican convention, I'm going to restore law and order.
And I have,
country.
except in Democrat-run cities. Look, we have laws. We have to go by the laws. We can't move in the National Guard. I can call insurrection, but there's no reason to ever do that, even in a Portland case. We can't call in the National Guard unless we're requested by a governor.
Sounds pretty clear to me, Larry.
make its way into the lawsuit that's being filed by the governor. It's firsthand, hearing the president say to himself that he can't do what he's doing right now. And I think one of the things, Roland, and people watching to understand, we've talked about this for the last several months about Project 2025, and undoubtedly some of the things that were going to happen as relates to ICE and using other agencies to identify individuals they want to remove from the United States. This is not about democracy, Roland. This is about power. And people have to understand that. And so the only way you can obviously deal with this is protest. And so the president said, once again, said himself that he shouldn't be able to simply send troops, use the National Guard in California without asking, make sure the governor is signed off on it. I think the other thing is interesting is from a historical perspective, Roland, is that we haven't really seen anything like this in terms of what the governor of a state is asking for and what the president provides since the 1960s as it relates to the civil rights movement. And we know that at that time, Black folks were fighting to be treated like citizens. So decades later, we're back in the same issue again, but this time it's obviously doing those who are individuals who have come to this country, many of who are law-abiding and seeking for a better life. But once again, understand this is about power. This is not about democracy. The other challenge with this, Roland, is this will escalate, whether it's California or LA or another state or city. This will escalate into eventually one person or individuals will be harmed. This is going to be on TV. And then the question is, how do people in those communities and throughout the nation respond when they see violence like we've seen numerous times in escalation in terms of interactions with law enforcement throughout the last several years? What will be the response when someone gets hurt and is filmed on live television?
They don't care, Tylik, and so you see what they're doing, and yes, they want this to be the case. They want to see this battle. They want to have it, and again, it's a just show of force, and we're going to sit here and take control of this. I saw this clip. Stephen A. Smith was saying, "Oh, that Donald Trump is winning on this." No, he's not, and so what you're seeing is the feelings. You're seeing these things brew, and I'm telling you. This is the moment where I believe fundamentally you've got to have people who recognize that they have to stand up. They must fight. They must do battle. They must recognize that these thugs are going to continue doing this. And if the American people do not fight back, then they are going to continue.
Absolutely, Roland. And I think, history tells us this, that silence in the face of tyranny is complacency. But protest, especially protest that is rooted in love, is the heartbeat of our democracy. And it's the heartbeat of who we are as people standing up to bigots and tyrants. And I think, it's a simple fact. It's a powerful demand that protesters are echoing across the world to stop criminalizing families, to stop caging our children, to stop using tax dollars to terrorize immigrant communities, because what we see here is not a mirror of strength, but it's a mirror of tyranny, and it's not law and order, but it's really lawlessness cloaked in a badge. And I want to be very clear on this, that this is just not about immigration policy. It's more about the right to dissent. It's about the right to gather, the right to raise our voices, the right to speak up. And without being brutalized or terrorized or labeled a domestic terrorist, I believe the First Amendment was not written for us to be comfortable, but it was written for us to protect the very uncomfortable truths to the ones that are in power. And I think, as you said before, now is the time not to be dismayed or to be comfortable or complacent, but now is the time to speak up and stand 10 toes down on what we believe in, standing up to a bigot and tyranny.
And I hope people really understand what is going on here. I'm going to read for you, Mustafa. This is a comment. This was a very interesting comment here. So Christopher Rufo, who is the leader against CRT and woke and DI, all those different things. This is literally what he wrote on his Substack. And if you want to understand how demented these people are and really what their goal is, they still are mad. And I keep telling people, they still are angry and mad with what took place during the Black Lives Matter protests. This is what he wrote. At the same time, as we saw demonstrated in Portland, Oregon, during the George Floyd, he calls them riots, the agencies should dispatch unmarked vans to follow key agitators and snatch them from the streets while the media are not looking. The most effective riot control is to, I need everybody listening to me right now. This is Christopher Rufo. Conservatives love him. Ron DeSantis loves him. The most effective riot control is to take movement leaders off the field, infiltrate their networks, disrupt the flow of funding, and roll them up in federal investigations. Denying the left trained protest leaders now will create a strong precedent for the rest of the president's term. Christopher Rufo is calling for COINTELPRO 2.0.
Well, you know, they took their lessons from J. Edgar Hoover and the things that they did in relationship to the civil rights movement and the AIM movement, the Chicano movement, all these movements. So, you know, now we're, 70 years past that, and they continue to understand that there is power in unity, that there is power also in us realizing that we don't have to have these types of egregious behaviors going on. Dr. King once said that a riot is the language of the unheard. And that's exactly what we see playing out. So they want to silence your voice. They want to make sure also that, they have the power to control voting, housing, transportation, all the things that are connected to resources. They want to make sure that they can strip those away. So but if individuals can't speak out and talk about the disparate impacts that are happening, then they win. Now, that's why, and I've had these conversations with brothers and sisters over the last couple of days that we have to be very conscious, right? I hear people saying, well, we don't need to get involved. And I remembered of that poem that says first they came for the Jews, right? And that I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for the communists and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a communist. And then they came for the trade unionists and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. You can go all the way down all these types of things that we currently have going on in our country and place those in. I wasn't black, so I didn't say anything. I wasn't an LGBTQ member, so I didn't say anything. I wasn't X, Y, or Z. So we have to understand this game that is being played, right? And the game has been well thought out. They have learned lessons from the past, and they understand how to strip your rights away. And that's what they are trying to play out right here on your screen. They said that the revolution will not be televised. Well, we're seeing right before our eyes how mothers are being taken from their children, and how grandmothers are being caught up in this, and so many other folks. So yes, I understand that we have to take care of our community. I completely understand that. But we also have some responsibility to make sure that we're also living up to what Malcolm said. Malcolm once said, wrong is wrong no matter who does it or says it. So if we remember those words, we can also make sure that we are taking care of our community and strengthening and also understanding why strategic partnerships and alliances are so important when you're dealing with fascists who are trying to pit one against the other to be able to control.
Those comments right there, Larry, by Christopher Rufo, this is what the right wants to do. They despise protesters. Now, they don't mind January 6th protesters. Donald Trump complains about, these folks are attacking cops, but he had no problem pardoning those white domestic terrorists who did what they did on January 6th. And so what they're all saying is, hey, if you beat up cops for me, I will free you from prison. The rest of you who choose to protest, I'm throwing you in jail.
Yeah, Roland, this is a huge contradiction. We all on January 6th watched, not just here in the United States, but people throughout the world watch what happened in terms of individuals brutalize law enforcement, break into the U.S. Capitol, trash it, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars in terms of property. And we don't even talk about all the things that happen in Congressman Pelosi's office, et cetera. So we watched that international embarrassment. And here we are a few years later. You're right. Many of those insurrectionists have been pardoned. And we're now saying that people who are mostly peaceful protesting is inconsistent with democratic values. And I go back to the point I made earlier about power and not democracy. This is about power. Listen, if you're going to uphold white nationalist ideas and views, then you're fine. If you are fighting for a multiracial democracy, they have a problem with you. And Roland, you highlight some very important, and we continue to go back to Project 2025. That first administration was a dry run. They have now fine-tuned every step they need to take to make sure they undermine democracy. That's why we see more and more, conversations about individuals being grabbed in jurisdictions throughout the United States. Never hear from them again. People don't know where their family members are. This will continue to escalate until they continue, and they'll continue to grab people off the streets, black box them. You won't ever hear from individuals again. And once again, you'll find out that in El Salvador, they try to send some people to South Sudan and various other parts of the world. That is not democracy. We don't have due process. We also have to remember you have to abide by the U.S. Constitution, and individuals have the right to protest. So if we don't continue to keep our eyes on the prize, once again, we will find more and more of our individuals that we care about, those who are protesting to fight to make sure we maintain our democracy. Those individuals, once again, will be grabbed up and dropped into a black box.
Well, we see exactly what's going on here. And I'm going to tell you point blank, Tyler, people need to understand they want to do this all across the country. Folks should gird themselves for more of this.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a moment that I think we must decide whether we stand on the sidelines and let freedom be redefined by fear. I think, from the Garvey movement to the Haitian Revolution to Angela Davis and, as you mentioned, Black Lives Matter and Dream Defenders, our freedoms have always understood that liberation is the goal. And even as I'm seeing these ICE raids, I'm thinking, they mirror slave catching patrols, storming homes and separating families. And detention centers are looking like modern day plantations. And we're seeing, mass deportations that's happening. And I think it's just a reflective that history repeats itself. And we must really decide which side of history we stand on. And I always say, all the time, people always say, well, in the 60s, I would have did this. But now history is at our doorstep, and we must decide which side of history we will stand on and what would the history books say about us in this moment in time.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hegseth III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.